Hi, and welcome to Artisan Training Module 4018, Vehicle Checklist Part 3, the next 30% of what. Here we're going to go through row 74 through 118 on the Purple Team checklist. And to kind of reflect, 2 modules ago we discussed why we do checklists and how we do checklists. The point is to make sure that everything is 100%. It's not just a list that you check, but rather you're making sure things are squared away and you're working from paper, so that you can do a great job when you're out in the field. The 3M dust mask is the next line on here. These are the same masks that we use the VOC cartridges on, that we wear when we're rolling sealer or coatings, anything that's got a nasty chemical to it. But the pink dust masks are going to protect you from silica dust when you're grinding, cutting, or otherwise polishing concrete. The leaf blower should be topped off with gas. It's a 50-to-1 mixture of gas and 2-cycle engine oil. You always want to make sure that you go out in the field with a full tank of gas in your leaf blower. You don't want to be fueling that stuff up on a customer's driveway that you're going to stain. You don't want to be spending a single minute in the field that you could have spent at the shop getting ready by yourself. The next lines on your checklist are a gallon of all the Chemico stain colors, muriatic acid, and NutriClean. We keep 1 full gallon, meaning if you use a couple of quarts, you're going to want to top that back up and let the material and tool manager know which job you use those quarts of stain on, so that we can attribute that correctly. You want to make sure that the caps are on tight and keep all bottles in the cabinet, not on the floor with a bungee cord through it or anything janky like that. Among those 1-gallon bottles is Grease Lightning. We use this to pull oil out of concrete in preparation for acid staining or dyeing, but it can also be used full strength to spot fix. If you're preparing a floor and you see a place where the concrete is repelling oil, you'll want to use this stuff full strength to remove that. Air tool oil and certain foods can penetrate the concrete without darkening it and create a problem for you later when you stain it, and Grease Lightning is a great tool to remove that. We keep 20 pounds of anchoring cement on the truck. That's a material that will only mix up maybe a cup at a time, very carefully adding water. It gets very hard very fast, but it's really dark gray, so we really only use it if we're going to overlay the floor and we're getting the shape right, or we have a black floor and we can get away with a really dark material. Generally for patching, we're going to use Mapei M-20, and there's another process for this. You'll note that a 50-pound bag is mixed with 5.5 to 5.8 quarts of water. So it's critical to weigh it at the shop and do the math and figure the water before you go out in the field. Again, 5.5 to 5.8 quarts of water, that's like 10 ounces of variance for that whole 50-pound bag. So you can't just cowboy that stuff and have it work. You gotta measure it out and know how much water, and you want to make sure that you have 20 pounds with a label on it that says how much water and polymer to add to really make a first-class patch. Funnels are not disposable. You want to take care of your stuff, create a place on your van where the funnel goes, and then put the funnel back every time so you don't keep having to buy funnels or making funnels with gallon jugs and looking like a redneck. The syringes, we keep 3 sizes, the 3, the 35, and the 60. We use these for putting material into really small places, but more so for measuring small amounts. They're graduated in milliliters, and the 3 milliliter one especially, you can do like 0.8 milliliters pretty accurately with that syringe. And if you know that a fluid ounce equals about 30 milliliters, you can work in really small quantities with samples and repairs and still get, let's say, that 3-ounce loading of portion control colorant in an Elite Crete material, even at a 1/16 of a bag or whatever it is. The buckets are pretty obvious. This is common sense, but we do that at an uncommonly high level. You want to make sure that they're clean, they're ready to go, and they're nested in one another, meaning the 10-quart container is in the 5-gallon bucket, and inside that is the 5-quart container, and inside that is the 2.5-quart container. They're all kind of sitting inside one another, clean, ready to go. The next thing on your list is your extension cords. There's 4 altogether, 200 footers and 250 footers. The connectors have to be in good shape, no tears, no exposing wires. We'll go through how to fix that on another module. I plugged the male and female into the thing together. We've got a little video here. Old
Start with the loop.
He was awesome
and then you bring
guy.
your rabbit up through the loop.
60s, he's been a
And
craftsman.
make what almost looks like a knot on the cord.
A couple things wrong in the video though. You'll notice that the connectors
and
are not plugged in together.
You just keep
And
pulling
he
it
started
through.
on the end with the connectors, and when you do that, you have to unbraid the entire cord. Whereas if
don't
you
get the loops too big,
in the middle,
because what happens is they hang up on everything.
You could
undo
undo 10 or 20 feet without unbraiding the whole thing. But you watch how that guy carries himself, how he moves, how he makes most of his loops about the same. It's good to study master artisans, whether they're cabinet makers or sheet metal guys or what.
And then the last end,
like he's got a
you bring it back through the loop again.
Little hook there. I think he's kind of making
and it gives you a good place to hang or where to start from to hang. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right, on to the sprayers. It's critical that your sprayers are in good shape. These are what we're paid to use, and so when I'm out with the teams, first thing I generally check are the sprayers. You want to make sure they're clean, that all the seals are sound, especially the gaskets to and from the wand. Those are easy to lose if you're not careful. You want to put a little water in there, make sure they work, and then when it's all squared away, tape the wand to the sprayer so that you're not looking for it. And when you're on the job site, you're generally mixing up stain, away from where you're parking, and you want to be able to carry everything with one hand. A little review of the sprayers. We talked about this in the first module. The yellow sprayers are for acid only. You check for gaskets on both ends of the wand especially. The white and red dye sprayers are for acetone and dye only. All the seals are in the same spots, but they're different seals. You want to check those with water also. And then your workhorse, the sprayer that you'll use for almost everything else, is your Chapin heavy-duty industrial sprayer. They're metal. When you use those with sealer, you got to rinse them with xylene and then promptly with soap and water. You never want to just have xylene marinating in those things and ruining the hoses. The water hose is the next thing on your checklist. Obviously, you want to make sure there's no holes in it and that the male and female connectors, you want to screw those things together so they don't get bent, so they don't get sand in there. If you just kind of wipe them with a rag and then do that, it keeps it nice. If you ever do get a hole in it, there's a male and female repair kit on your van, and we keep those in the shop. If nothing else, you can cut the hose into 2 hoses and put new ends on it and have 2 smaller hoses rather than one big leaky hose. Next items on your checklist is the Bassine and Union Mix brush. These are used for applying paste wax. The bristles should be more than 1 inch long. If you use them for paste wax, you're going to clean them with mineral spirits after use. And the Union Mix brush is used to buff out the paste wax, or these things are great for scrubbing up the residue from acid staining. You can put your NutriClean and water in the tank of your buffer and then apply that with the trigger and get the floor extremely clean without dumping water all over the floor that you have to pick right back up. The next thing on there is your pad driver or driver plate. That's used to run the black, red, or white pads on the buffer. Really the only maintenance thing on this is you want to make sure that the screws that hold that clutch plate and riser pad are all nice and tight. There's no way to use Loctite or thread locker on those screws, and the vibration, they can kind of wear themselves loose and makes them not work very well. Got a little video of paste wax, that's your screw. Put it down. You put it down in circles with the axle and get a Bassine brush on the buffer. The guy with the stick has
yeah, it was filming.
The buffer. That's how you put wax on. We don't do very much of that, so I wanted to include a video so you knew what that looked like. The red, white, and black pads, these are driven by the pad driver. The black pads are excellent for preparing concrete for staining. They're designed for stripping floor wax off a tile and whatnot. So if you look, they'll actually scratch and remove material. They're stripping pads. They're made for removing stuff. So if you need something less aggressive, the red pad is made for cleaning without stripping. So if you have to clean a floor before a final polish or dry buffing, the red pad is probably more useful in general than any of the other ones. The white pads are polishing pads. They're used for buffing out floor finishes that are dry. So you can use these to gently remove dye residue or anything where you have to be kind of delicate. Scrubbing in general is just like diamond polishing. Something wet is twice as aggressive as something dry. So just be mindful of that when you're using it. The last 5 things on there are the FrankenPads. These will probably be reduced to 2 or 3 things with the 3-step polishing pads that we're using now. Just a little background on where that name came from. I invented these in my shop one night. I was doing a project for the community college that's part of Texas Tech. We were making benches and an altar for their chapel, and we had to grind to the aggregate so that they would match the floor. And chasing those cup wheel scratches out is a lot of work. My arms were getting tired, and so I had the idea to just glue the pads onto a red pad and then put the buffer up there and then put some bags of concrete on the buffer because I couldn't lift I was at the shop by myself and I couldn't put like an HTC 500 on a polishing table, and so that's kind of where that came from. Here's a picture of those benches and that altar, and again, the Franken thing comes from the Mary Shelley novel Dr. Frankenstein, and the movies, it always shows like there's thunder and lightning and the mad scientist comes up with something. That was like 11 years ago, and we've been using them ever since. They're just fantastic. So it just kind of reminds us to be thankful, know that you are able to start with what took over a decade to develop, but then you got to have the heart, you got to have the drive. Nobody can make you a master except you. And so now that you've watched this once, I would try taking the test and then rewatch the video and see how you did on the test. Get aware of the areas that you are already knowledgeable and the areas that maybe you could get a little stronger, and be looking for details. Look for details in what I've made here. You'll find all kinds of mistakes probably, but then look for details that you can add to this. Do the work to become excellent and care about being a part of something bigger than yourself. Because the more little things that you can add, these hundreds of little things added together, is what make you a master and make this team something to be proud of. And that's why all the high-end builders, high-end architects choose Element 7 concrete, and you should have a little bit of pride, a little bit of swagger when you say it. So I appreciate your engagement. Have a great day.